Well, there's a few news stories. Um, because we pulled out of Afghanistan so badly and abandoned all kinds of people that had worked with us, there are a bunch of soldiers that we trained in Afghanistan that cannot go home because they'll get killed by the Taliban. So now they're being hired by the Russians. They have to go somewhere. We didn't let them come back here. We just abandoned an enormous number of people that were our allies in Afghanistan. So what are they going to do? Well, apparently they're going to work for the Russians and kill Ukrainians because they have nowhere better to go. This is the same thing happened with bin Laden. We trained a bunch of his people and armed them, and then they turned against us. We have this. The CIA tends to be a short-term thinker. They never seem to worry about creating a problem tomorrow to accomplish their goal today, and we've done it again. So there's a data wiper that is called Azov, which claims to be ransomware, but in fact there is no way to recover the files because it tells you to contact a bunch of legitimate security researchers, and in fact none of these people have anything to do with it. So it's an attempt to frame these legitimate researchers as criminals and wipes out data, and just to make a lot of people mad at them and flood them with help desk calls, which they are getting. So I haven't heard of that exact problem before, although I have heard of notes to prominent malware analysts being left in malware for them to find. The ISC squared, which is this body that does the CISSP certification, has an amazing proposal to basically turn them into a fascist dictatorship, where there will never be another election, and candidates have to have an impossible number of people to apply. Every election will have only as many candidates as there are openings, so they will all always win. And they're rushing this through in a hurry so people can't vote. And so here's an open letter from Wim Reams, who is a well-known, well-respected security professional, talking about the problems here and asking them to knock it off. We'll see what happens. Most internet standards bodies like this have been very fraught, like the ones that handle the domain name system and others like ICANN. Very, very fraught. Very, very corrupt, with a lot of industrial and financial interests contaminating them, and a lot of battles. So there's a new way to measure time based on quantum interference. So you have two quantum objects in uncertain states, and they interfere with each other, creating a kind of wave in the quantum fog, which can be used to measure time. This is called a Rydberg state. This is when you excite an atom, so an electron moves to a higher energy state, so the atom is larger and more loose and floppy. And you can get it to interact with nearby atoms and create a pattern in that interaction that can be used to measure time. So we'll see. It may turn out to have a variety of useful features, that sort of thing. So I didn't know this. Churches are extremely involved in politics now. In fact, I've read a lot of reports about if you go to these fundamentalist churches that are not part of a national chain, but just like Joe Bob's Bible Church, they tend to be the size of a super Walmart with thousands of people, and they tend to have big Trump rallies right in the middle of church during service. They're very, very political. They're very, very tied to Republicans, and it's totally integrated with religion, and this is apparently illegal. It wasn't always that way, but 70 years ago there was a law passed outlawing churches explicitly endorsing candidates. So that's interesting, but it seems to be being completely ignored by the government agencies, just like a lot of things. I mean, there's also a law against campaigning in the White House grounds, against using your political office you have to campaign for the next one, and Trump just openly did it. Just had the Republican National Convention right at the White House in blatant violation of the law, and nothing happened. So, you know, we're watching our legal system be exposed as extremely corrupt, where you don't really get punished for things if you're big and important. They'll just ignore the fact that you're breaking the law. Although some people think perhaps Trump will be charged with something after this election. We will see. We've all been waiting 6 years for Trump to get charged with anything, and all the legal agencies always seem to chicken out at the last minute. So we'll see if Merrick Garland actually charges him with anything or not. This was pretty amazing. As a lot of reports have come out that all the emergency money made available to give people and companies as a result of the pandemic, a lot of that stuff was just stolen because there wasn't much oversight. So Deloitte provided a pandemic benefit system to prevent that, but they had an employee they fired, and that employee retained access to the system for a month, and they would just sell the removal of fraud tags so people could take the money. So now it's coming out that that's what happened, that their so-called prevention of fraud had a serious defect. So this is pretty amazing to watch. You know, Paul Pelosi here in San Francisco was assaulted late at night with a guy with a hammer who was a right-wing nut job QAnon type, and it was explicitly political. He explained, he's now told the cops why he did it, and he was going to interrogate Nancy Pelosi, and he was going to break her kneecaps if he didn't like her answers, and he was following typical right-wing political motivation. So it's extremely obvious it's a politically motivated crime, but Elon Musk immediately retweeted the Republican conspiracy theory, showing that all the liberals that were terrified when Musk bought Twitter were apparently correct. I was thinking it wouldn't matter that much, but obviously he is just a far-right lunatic and basically a Steve Bannon podcast kind of guy. So first thing he did was put this out. This is an example, and they say this probably most of the GOP is probably believe this by the end of the week. They decided that he's gay and he's having meeting his gay lover, and it was a lover's quarrel, and there is no evidence for any of that, and very strong evidence that was not the motivation, but it makes an exciting story, always with like a forbidden sexual angle to make people hook into it. And if you have a bunch of people primed to believe that everything they see on the news is false, and only the exciting, lurid stuff that you get from alternative media, basically Facebook primarily, is the real stuff, a large part of the GOP will believe this soon, and you can watch how they invent this stuff and move it. Now, a sociological point of view, it sort of explains how religions come about, but it's creating this problem in our politics where a large portion of the voters live in a world of fantasy and science fiction and do not have any connection to reality. So it's hard to understand how democracy can survive that way. And indeed, it doesn't look like we're going to be a democracy much longer the way things are going. So maybe that's the answer. They want us to be a dictatorship, and that may very well be where we are in a few years here. So this one's pretty amazing. And I don't know why they're bugging me. I guess I haven't signed in. I should be able to sign in. Let's see. I think I signed in with Google. Let's see if that works. Oh, for crying out loud. All right. I'm supposed to have LastPass, and somehow I don't. My password manager is not doing the job. Anyway, let me see if I can get back to at least the headline of the story, remember what it's about. Yeah, so there's these huge protests in Iran now. The women are protesting against the morality police that are punishing them for not wearing the recommended clothing. And this one woman was killed in custody for not having the hijab on. And so now they have charged the journalists who broke that story as being CIA spies. This is the general regime response to everything there, is that everything is a CIA plot. And of course, quite a few things that happened to Iran were CIA plots, although I don't suppose this one was, but who knows. But anyway, that's where they're at now. They've jailed the journalists who broke the story. So it's pretty gruesome. It's incredible. Haniyeh just destroyed his entire empire in a week by posting anti-Semitic statements, and Trump said essentially the same thing, but nothing happened to him. But anyway, so Kanye lost $1.5 billion, and so did Facebook. Facebook lost an incredible amount of money over the last quarter, and they've fallen from like the top few companies in the world down below, out of the top 20. They're losing all their money building this metaverse, and this metaverse is this ridiculous cartoony thing where people don't even have legs. It is, nobody believes in it, and Zuckerberg is burning an incredible amount of money developing this worthless product that everybody can see is worthless, and his investors are jumping ship, the advertisers are jumping ship, everybody's abandoning it, and he's just driving the ship into the ground. So
Facebook is another part of Facebook. The user is dropping.
Yeah, the users have been dropping because and so he's trying to turn it into TikTok without much luck, and he's betting the whole company on the metaverse, which seems to be a complete flop. A lot of people say some version of the metaverse will be popular in 5 years, but it won't be the Facebook version. It'll probably be the Apple version. But the thing, he's making a worthless product and spending all their money on it. So it's an argument for not having dual-class stakeholders. The problem is, if it was a normal company, he could be fired for this. And it happened to Steve Jobs. When he started leading Apple in a terrible direction with Lisa, the board of directors fired him. You're supposed to have a board of directors that represent the shareholders, and when you're failing to make profit for the shareholders, they fire the CEO, but you can never do that at Facebook. He's the only one that has the kind of stock that can vote on that. So you can't fire him no matter what he does. And we're seeing sort of a morality play in why that is not the way to do it. So Jack Dorsey put in Elon Musk as the head of Facebook, or head of Twitter, and Elon Musk now took it private. And Jack Dorsey is starting an alternative system called Blue Sky, which is supposed to be like a meta social network where you create a Blue Sky account, your identity is on the blockchain, and you can somehow connect it to all different social networks and not be tied to any one of them, although it's in an early pre-beta yet. So nobody knows exactly what it's going to do, but that's the idea. And this article is pretty interesting on medium.com. Trying to analyze why Elon and Jack are doing the weird things they're doing, because he has an argument which I had not heard before, but which sounds kind of plausible. You know, Elon and Jack are billionaires. They don't even need money. They don't even need success anymore, and so they're planning how to like change the human race. Elon Musk said his goals are, number one, to end the use of fossil fuel and electrify the world, and number two, to make us into an interplanetary species by moving to Mars. And he's serious about these things and making significant progress in both of them, and that's what matters to him. And both of them have abandoned democracy as a waste of your time, letting stupid people control. They feel the world should really be controlled by a couple of brilliant oligarchs like them, who can steer the humanity where it needs to go, and it doesn't really matter about democracy. And that may very well be true. It would explain what they're doing a little more than this, because Elon's burning an incredible amount of money. And he's doing it in order to spread right-wing conspiracy theories that are utterly false on Twitter, which people said he would do that, and I didn't believe it, but now he's doing it. So he is basically turning Twitter into Steve Bannon's podcast, which is a strange utopia he's building, but that's what he's doing. Anyway, yeah, that's what he's done here. Elon Musk and other right-wing figures have now pushed this ridiculous conspiracy theory about Pelosi having some sort of sex event which caused him to get hit in the head with a hammer, which is completely false, but will be popular. Yes, and that's why, you know, what Elon seems to be doing is to imitate what Facebook did, which is to monetize this, which is to let the right-wing people spread this stuff but charge the money for it. That's how you at least make money out of their desire to poison us all with misinformation. That would appear to be, that's what he's telling his investors he's going to do. What he's really doing, nobody knows. I'm not even sure he knows. He seems to just sort of play with the world instead of seriously try to achieve things, which is what tends to happen when you're that rich and powerful. Anyway, let me stop this.